Hi guys, and welcome to this seasonal tutorial where I will teach you how to do what I was told never to do and put all of my eggs in one basket. So in this tutorial I'm going to be using the cloner, a particle emitter and dynamics to fill my very own Easter basket. Okay, so let's get going. So to start with, to make the basis of our basket, I am going to need a spline. Okay, so I'm just going to select a circle, okay, and I'm just going to change its plane so that it is sitting on the XZ plane, okay, so it's nice and flat. And then I'm going to make it editable, okay, and I'm going to go to points mode and I can see that I've got my 4 points. Now that's not going to be enough to give that nice weave effect that I'm going to be using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of my points with Command A, right click, and then I'm going to go to subdivide. So I'm just going to go to the settings and I'm going to look. At the moment it's going to subdivide 2 times, so it will increase that by a lot. But let's go to 3, and that's going to give me, okay, that gives me a few more, but that doesn't give me enough. So I'm just going to go to subdivide again, and I'm just going to subdivide it one more time. Okay, that looks like that gives me a nice amount of points. Now I'm going to need to just change those points a bit, so I only want to change half of them. So I'm just going to deselect the ones that I don't want, okay, and then I'm going to scale the others. Okay, so I'm just going to scale those in a bit, and you can see that that is now going to give me that nice sort of weaving in and out function that I'm going to want from it. There we go, just adjusted it a bit better. Okay, so that's cool. That gives me a starting point for my basket weave. And I'm going to simply put that in a sweep NURBS. So if I just create myself a sweep, and I'm going to create myself another circle. Obviously that's going to be way too big, so I'm going to shrink that down quite dramatically to say only about 2 centimeters. Okay, and then I'm going to put that together in there. There we go, and we get the start of my basket. Now that's relatively simple so far. So I'm going to create myself a cloner object because that's going to give me the rest of the basket. And I'm going to drag and drop that in there. Now that gives me 3, okay, which is nowhere near as many as I am going to need. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whack that count up, okay, but it's obviously going to increase its height dramatically, which isn't what I want. So using that, I'm just going to bring its height down. Okay, so I'm going to just zero out those. Okay, and maybe I want a load more, so I'm just going to shrink its height down there. There we go, so we can see that they're nice and neat. Doesn't really matter if they're touching a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to whack it up, depending obviously the height that you want your basket. I'm just going to go for 50 because it gives me a nice tall basket. Okay, now the other thing you can do is you can increase its scale. So if I, just play with those settings, you can see that I've got vast control over how wide this basket goes. Now just 101 by 101%, so it's ever so slightly bigger each time, gives me this nice basket shape. Now, in order to get the decent weaving in and out function, okay, we need to adjust the rotation of each step as well. So if you see, if I increase its step, it gets some, interesting sort of maneuvering here. A simple degree per step will change it quite dramatically. So if I just increase my angle, there we go, a little bit, you can see that it goes a little bit crazy. So I need to find the axis that it's going to adjust on. There we go. Okay, you can see that quite quickly I get some changes in the movement there. But what I need is I need to change it a certain amount of degrees so that the middles start to meet, okay, down there. Now that's a little bit too much, so it might be a case of you're going to have to start to adjust those by points of a degree. Okay, I think it's, there we go, about 11.5. Okay, maybe not. Going to your top view, okay, might help because it will give you an idea of where it's turning. And I'm actually going to go back to 100% for the moment, just so that they're on top of each other and I can see how much this is adapting. Okay, it might even be 0.25. Okay, depending on the amount of subdivisions you've got and the amount of wiggle room that you've created, you may find, okay, that it's just going to create some tweaking so that your layers overlay. Okay. Oh, there we go. 10 degrees. There we go. And what that should do now is that should give, yeah, that doesn't look like it's enough. Because can you see we've got the base layer and base layer, but that needs to be in the middle and the next one needs to be over. So if I just increase it by 1 degree, 15. There we go. For me it was 15 degrees. And that gives us this nice overlay with a whole load of gaps. Ooh, that will give us exactly what we want to be able to put the sort of rungs in. Okay, cool. And now I can increase my width again, 101 to 101. And there we have this nice woven basket shape. Okay, now I need to do the support struts. Okay, and this is relatively simple. I'm going to use, though, rather than a cylinder, which would fit nicely, I'm going to use a cone. And my reason for using the cone is I can control the top and bottom radius really quite nicely. And you might find that because I've used the scale of the cloner, that the top of the holes is slightly different to the bottom. And in order not to get them to intersect, I'm going to use that. Okay, so I need another cloner. So MoGraph Cloner. Okay, and this time I'm going to put my cone object in there. It wants to instantly create a linear clone straight on top of each other, so this time I need to change it to radial. Okay, and it's decided to do it that way, which gives me these weird spikes, which is not what I want. So if I just adjust that, there we go to the XZ, you can see that I now have the ability of moving my way, of moving these support struts out. Obviously 5 is not enough. Okay, so I just need to work out how many supports that I'm going to need. And that's done simply by counting the number of gaps that you are going to have. Okay, so if I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, and I'm going to have another 6, 12, 24, okay, 6, 24 in total should be. Okay, and I'm going to expand those out so that they sit in the middle. Okay. Obviously they're a bit large, so I'm just going to shrink those quite dramatically. I mean, I'm just going to do it maybe 5 by 5. Okay, now with this cloner, okay, I want to just adjust its angle ever so slightly. Okay, so if I grab that there we go. Okay, and they start to sit in those gaps. Now, the cloner radius just needs to expand a little bit more so that they're seated in it better. Okay, and then I'm going to adjust that angle again of the transform. Maybe it was 25.5. Okay. And there we go, we've got a really nice, quite matched angle there. The cone probably needs to be a little bit taller. And that gives us those nice little angles, nice little sort of weaves there. So the bottom's not too bad. Okay, but we might need to adjust the cloner angle a little bit more. Oop. So it's a case of just adjusting the angle and then bringing in that radius so that you're happy that those supports are in the middle of the top and the bottom. Now, as you can see, the bottom, the gap is slightly smaller, so that's why I've used a cone. So the bottom radius, I'm just going to shrink a little bit so that the top radius sits in those gaps. Okay, cool. That gives me my basket. Not too bad. Now for the trims, the brims as it were, okay, across the top. So to do this, I'm going to use another spline and another sweep. So just to give myself a new circular spline, and then I'm going to shrink it down, okay. And I'm going to make that, and I'm going to make it quite small. Okay, and then I'm going to use another cloner object. Ooh. And I'm going to put the circle in it. And again, I'm going to turn it from linear to radial. So now if I have a look, you can see that I've got my 5 splines along there. Just going to move them up so that you can see what's going on. I'm just going to shrink the radius because I don't want them to be that big. Okay. So that's going to be quite a thick brim, so I'm going to shrink that even more, say about 7.5, and then I'm going to shrink that. Okay, just going to press S on my keyboard to zoom in on stuff that's selected, and then I'm just going to make sure that they're touching nicely. There we go. Okay, and now that's going to form another part of the sweep that will sweep its way around. So, to create myself another sweep NURBS, okay, and I'm going to create myself another circle, but I'm going to use this one. Okay, I'm going to create myself a copy of that so that I know it meets the base exactly. And then I'm going to put the cloner in the sweep and the circle in the sweep. Okay, and you notice that currently only one sweeps around the other. Okay, and if I do that, okay, we get a very tiny circle there. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to connect these. So using a connect with that selected, okay, hold down Alt on my keyboard, and Alt will create the connect object with the cloner on the inside. Okay, you can see that that's sweeping all the way one around the other that way, which is not what I wanted. Okay, and if I do that, okay, we have it there. So that circle, I've just realised I created the wrong one, didn't I? So I'm going to take that circle out, and I'm going to make myself a new one anyway. Okay, so that circle is there. XZ, okay, and now, okay, if I do it, there we go. And that gives me a really quite chunky base. So maybe I want to adjust that a little bit, and I can do so using, okay, the cloner here. So if I just turn off the sweep and I have a look at my circle there, maybe I shall only make that 2.5, and then I will adjust that. So now if I turn my sweep back on, here we go, that's a bit nicer. But these baskets have that nice twist. So in order to get that twist, using the sweep NURBS, okay, you have got some end rotations. And if I increase my rotation, you can see that that starts to twist. Okay, and that gives me some nice curvature around. But it does create a little issue there where the beginning and the end of the splines start to go a little bit crazy. But that's easily changeable under the details. So under the sweep knobs with the details, if you just adjust its rotation, you can see that that starts to clean its way up. Okay, whilst still giving me this nice rotation all the way around. I'm just going to increase the radius of that circle just so it encompasses those a little bit better. Okay. Maybe I need to just actually shrink it a little bit, but move it down. Here we go. Okay, so that gives the effect that this wicker basket finishes there. And now, in order to make life really easy, I'm just going to Command C, Command V, create a second one, and move that to the top. And then increase that radius so that I get the top of my basket. Okay, excellent. There we go, I have my basket. All but the floor. So just to create myself a floor, the easiest thing to use is a disc. So that disc is going to give myself the nice base of the basket, ensuring that it's within it, and I have my lovely little finished basket here. Okay, there we go, that was quite quick. Now to texture. Okay, so simple textures for this, so just create yourself a new texture. Okay, and under the color function, if you go to textures, under surfaces there is wood. Okay, and that gives you a relatively useful wood texture that we're going to be fine for using this. So I'm just going to minimize this, and then I'm just going to name these so that I know what it is that I am going to be, well, texturing basically. Okay, so in the image that I showed you, I gave two different textures for a variety of the different things. So there's a lighter one, okay, and that's going to be used for the weave, and then a darker one, which I normally use for the rods, the top, the bottom, and the base. So the lighter one really is quite a light colour, and I just choose something that's very similar to the other one, so that it gives a nice overall effect. And I just apply that to the weave, okay, and then Command copy and paste to create a second. Okay, and then I shall use this to create a darker one. So I shall create a darker version there, and then an even darker version here. Okay, so that we get this, it's a bit orange for my liking there. Okay, there we go. And that's the one that I then apply to the rods, and Command drag to the top, the base, and there. Okay, and if I just give that a little render, yeah, it's not too bad. It gives us that nice sort of effect that we've got going on with all of these weaves and this wood effect. You may want to adjust some of its specular. So with both of them selected, okay, I'm going to go to the reflectance tab. I'm going to increase the width actually, because wicker baskets are actually quite broad and they're shiny, but I am going to increase its specular strength. Okay, just have a little render. Yeah, the light's playing around there quite a lot. Once we get it in an environment, we'll be able to see how it's going to look a little bit better. Right, okay, so there we go. There we have my basket. So I'm just going to select all of that, and then I'm going to group it. So Alt-G, I'm going to call that basket. Now, to do the eggs, okay, so I'm just going to hide that from my view. And to create an egg really quickly, I'm going to use a lathe NURBS. So going to my front view, F4, I'm just going to create myself an egg. Okay, so I'm going to give myself a nice little egg shape. There. Okay, I'm going to make sure that that point is at 0. Okay, make sure only my spline is selected, that point's at 0, and that point is at 0. And then I'm going to create myself a lathe and drag and drop. There we go, call that egg. Of an interesting shape, so more of an acorn. So I'm just going to adjust my shape a bit so that it's a little bit more egg-like. Okay, cool. There we go, we have an egg. Obviously in comparison to the size of the basket, it's a tad large, but we can change that later. You can change it now, just to scale up and down. You can scale with what it is that we are going to produce a bit later on. Okay, so now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to sort out a basket. Now, whilst I've made my basket, this one is for a visual purpose, and I need something that is going to be filled with the eggs that gives me a little bit more control than relying on that geometry. So I'm going to create myself another cone. Okay, and then I'm just going to move it into the position so it's the right sort of height and width for the base of a basket. So I've got that basket there. I'm going to increase its top radius to that, and I'm going to increase its height. Okay, so a little bit of adjustment. It doesn't matter if it overlaps above the top. It just means that your eggs will definitely sit within this area. Okay, and this is going to be what I'm going to fill my eggs with. I'm going to turn the basket off, and I'm going to make my cone editable. Boom. Okay, and I'm going to delete the points on the top. Okay, so I don't want any points in here that are going to get in my way, because this is what I'm going to fill. Okay, now the eggs are going to be some form of dynamic, so we're going to need an emitter. So let me create myself an emitter. Okay, so under simulate, particles emitter. Okay, I've got my emitter. Just going to move it up. Okay, you can see that it's quite diddy. So I'm going to point it down to make sure that it's going to point within my basket. I'm just going to increase its scale because I want it to have an area of stuff that it's going to produce. So if I put my egg in my emitter, okay, look at my emitter, I want to show objects. Okay, so now if I press play, it rains down eggs. That's lovely. Okay, it's exactly what we want to happen. But they're not filling my basket. Okay, so we need to do that. So let's go to the cone. Okay, and under tags, under simulations, I'm going to need to make it a collider body. Okay, because that's what's going to be collided with. And my eggs, okay, I'm going to need to make a rigid body. Okay, boom. So now if I go back to the beginning, ding, 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 ding. They create, they bounce, but they fall through. Okay, this is because of the collision on the cone. So if I go to the cone, okay, you can see that I've got some shapes that I can choose down here under the collision side of this tag. So at the moment it's on automatic. If I choose static mesh, it will then use the shape of that basket. So going back to the beginning and press play, ding, 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 ding. Okay, there we go. It starts to stack up these baskets, this basket full of eggs. Marvelous. Okay, that's how I'm going to fill the basket. So now if I hide the cone and show the basket, go back to the beginning, okay, it will look like it's filling that basket full of eggs, which is perfect for me, okay. But now we need to texture these eggs, because at the moment we've only got one. So simplest way is to create yourself a new texture, okay. Under the color, I'm going to use a gradient, okay. And this gradient, if I just go into it, I'm just going to go to V, okay, and I'm going to create myself a couple of colors. So let's start with a nice lightish blue. Make sure that you select all of it when you do it. There we go. Nice lightish blue. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of the white for the second. Okay, and then I'm just going to Control or Command drag that so that it's both ends. Okay. Then I'm going to, let's make it a nice lightish red. Okay, and I'm going to Command drag another copy of that, and I'm going to Command drag another copy there. Okay, I'm just going to whack that central point. That acts as a nice sort of gradient manager, and if you put it right up against, you get these nice lines. Okay, so ba-dink, ba-dink, and then maybe a stripe in the middle, a nice bright yellow. Okay, and that gives me my nice sort of stripe. Okay, if I just did that, there we go. Okay, cool. Just adjust. There we go. And that gives me one stripe. Okay, and if I apply that to that egg, okay, it applies it in the wrong way. So change that to cylindrical. Boom. Okay, we don't seem to have that. So if I change the scale, okay, or maybe change its position then, and then change its scale. I've got the nice blue either end, the yellow stripe there. Okay, now I'm just going to name that egg 1, and then Command drag another one, which I shall call egg 2, and I will just adjust some of its settings. So let's just swap stuff about. So let's have a yellow stripe there. With blue in the middle. Red on the red on the outside. Here we go. Okay, and we've got a slightly different egg there. Command C, Command V, a different egg, and apply the different texture to it. And now I've got 2 eggs that are different. So now if I go back to the beginning and press play, I've got 2 different type of eggs being created. Now it's up to you with the number of ones that you want to do, or the different textures that you want to do, or things like that, to give you this nice sort of egg shape. So just going to change my specular on this a little bit. Just going to lower its height, but make it a bit broader, so that it's got that painted-y egg texture. Okay, that's cool. So I'm just going to increase my animation to say 150. I know I'm only going for a still image here, but what I want to do with my emitter, okay, I want it to create maybe 10 for only about 25 frames. Okay, so that it will fill up the egg and then stop. Okay, not enough to fill up the egg, so you can either increase the birth rate or you can increase the number of emissions. I find if you increase the birth rate, say if we up that to say 50, I know I'm only just going to show you, it creates an awful lot and they go everywhere because they're colliding with each other. Okay, so it doesn't really work. So I'm going to create the amount the same, but I'm going to birth them for longer, as it were. And then a couple collide, but some sit still. Okay, that's not too bad. Maybe if I did 75, an extra second's worth of stuff-ish. Okay, I get more in the basket. Equally, I can move my emitter closer to the basket and hopefully I won't lose as many out. Okay, and then that gives me a nice basketful rather, of eggs. Marvellous. Now to light them and render them out nicely. So in the content browser is something I use quite a lot, and it's this lightbox that comes with Cinema 4D. It's brilliant. Okay, so just double click that and it creates me a new file. Okay, I'm just going to get rid of the test objects, which is those in the center. And if I just come out of here, it gives me this basically product softbox that allows me to really nicely light my stuff. So I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to Command C. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my eggs and then I'm going to paste them in. Okay, and then I've got access to the tabletop. Okay, and I'm just going to change its scale a bit. Okay, there we go, so that we get this nice area. You might want to lower it down a bit depending on where you've made it, just to make sure that you get your basket in there. If I go to one of my views, I can see that that bottom line is where it is. Here we go. Okay, so using my filters there, okay, I can have a look through what it is that I want my final image to look like. Okay, I've got my eggs there, I've got my basket made. Okay, the cone is not visible. Okay, so a quick render. Okay, it's not too bad. It's a little bit flat. Okay, that's because one of the things always makes images a lot better, but does occasionally increase your render times. Okay, under the settings is ambient occlusion and global illumination. Okay, so now if I render that, you can see that it does take a little bit longer to render, but it does work out where light is bouncing properly, hence why you've got these really nice sort of glows around the eggs, because it's how the light is affecting itself. Okay, there you go. That took 2 minutes 35. I'm not too displeased with that. I've noticed a couple of problems there with some of the rods and stuff, so maybe if I lower the basket top a little bit, it will hide those. And I'm just going to decrease the radius of that a smidge, and then maybe okay, so you've got some control, depends on how particular you want to be about it. One thing about the scene though, if I just look at my data here, you can see that you've got ability to turn on shadows, okay, under this wonderful scene controller of the user data. So I'm just going to put on some area shadows from both sides to give it a really nice effective look. Also, I think I want my basket to be a tad fuller. So under the emitter, I'm going to make it play for 100 frames instead, emit for 100 frames. So if I just press play, yes, I lose a few, but the basket fills itself up much better. Oh, didn't press pause in enough time. Maybe if I did it, say 250 frames, gives it enough chance to settle. Put that on for 125. So if I go back to the beginning and press play, it's filling that basket nicely. Okay, there we go. Okay, look at that. That is a nice basket full of eggs. So now if I pause before the end, now if I render that scene, okay, which will take a little bit of of time, so I shall just speed this up. Okay, so there we go, 3.5 minutes, that went by fast, to produce your little egg basket there. I'm really quite happy with that. I think it looks like a nice, tasty and successful Easter egg hunt there. I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial and you found some useful stuff in it. Catch you later.